If you're a nurse who wants to leave the bedside or move up in leadership, but you've been told that you need a master's to do that, I'm here to let you know that you've been lied to. And the guest that will be joining me for today's episode of The Enlightened RN is going to prove it to you. Susie Branagan is a nurse with over 20 years of experience who excelled at using what she had available to her to improve patient outcomes in a measurable way. The reason Susie's story is so inspiring to me is that it highlights how taking responsibility to improve the world around you is indeed the key to unlocking the door of opportunity. So if you're a nurse who wants to learn how to use your current experience, skill set, and passion for improving patient outcomes to move up in the profession, grab something to take notes with and lock in.
So I'm Susie Branagan. I've been a nurse for 22 years, graduated from a college in New England from nursing school, and I have done your typical bedside nursing for most of my career. Started out in doing, being a CNA all the way up to charge nurse, team leader. And then I started looking into management, just kind of learning that, I kind of was sought after as a leader from peers and bosses that I've had in the past. So I've had a couple positions in management and running different types of units from med surge to ICUs to telemetry and child psych. And this is different for me because normally I would be in the hospital during the week, Monday through Friday. But in the last year, I have transitioned into a new role, still in leadership. I'm the Vice President of Clinical Experience and Enterprise Accounts at Invisalert Solutions. Our product is ObserveSmart, and it is an AI-based product. And we have many, many different platforms and different subjects that will cover everything that you're possibly wondering or trying to solve for in patient safety. So what's great about that is I do work from home. That's completely new for me. And I have the opportunity to kind of network in all different ways that I wouldn't have had before. So LinkedIn is usually something that I utilize in my daily work just to connect with people and get out there and try to network about our product and touch base with some former colleagues and hospitals that I've worked with in the past in New England. And came across your site, and it was just really interesting because you focus a lot on AI and just leaders and nurses in general kind of going out of the box a little bit and not just thinking the bedside is the end for me and I have to do this forever, which is what I think a lot of nurses still think and feel, and I did for 22 years of my career, I guess. But certain opportunities arise, and you really should make sure that you stay true to your values, which I am doing. I'm still working in patient safety and mental health, and that is my niche and something that I will never stop doing. So I wouldn't have taken this role as a work from home role away from kind of patient care all day if it didn't really tackle saving lives in general. So that's where I'm at right now.
Nice. And what I really love about what you said is that you're still staying true to what it is that originally brought you into the profession. I
Mhm.
think there is this misconception, and it truly is a misconception, that leaving the bedside means you're not a real nurse.
Mhm.
And that is a narrative I've been combating for a long time. And
Yeah.
another thing that really stood out to me about just your journey in general, which of course we'll expand in a little bit, is the fact that you don't have a master's degree. Because
Nope.
most nurses, they think not only can you not leave the bedside without a master's, but you can't get into high levels of leadership, especially not a VP position without a master's. Can you
No.
speak a little bit to how you managed to do that? Because I'd say you're a bit of an anomaly. And some people will be wondering, like, how
Yeah.
did you do it?
Yeah. Yeah, sure. I mean, I do know a lot. I think, some of the nurse colleagues I've worked with, it's a mixture of some that have their master's, some that have their doctorate, and that's wonderful for them and all the accolades to them that they deserve. I personally am still paying off my student loans from college. So for me, it was a matter of, is this master's degree something I can take on financially in my life? And is it actually going to get me what I need in my career and what I deserve? And some of the roles that I have applied for, it states master's degree preferred. But in the end, I still got the job and I was still highly respected and made a big difference on my units. And I think at the end of the day, I will always say that, your degrees and, your grade point averages and college and high, whatever it is, it really doesn't matter. Of course, if you failed out of college or that's a different story. But I mean, I'm talking like a difference of a grade point average, right? I didn't have a 4.0, but I had a 3 point whatever, right? I did pretty well, but not amazing. I wasn't a great test taker. I think we've discussed that. I used to do a lot of study groups with my peers in college where I would teach them the material in the study lounges or libraries. I'd use like boards. I was, using graphics and whatever ways that we could learn all the material. And then we would go in and take the test and would all come out and my friends would get an A+ and I would get like a B- or something like that. And it is quite devastating when you know that you know all the material and if you were at the bedside actually practicing this stuff, that you would be really genuinely good at it. But there is a big focus on test scores and grades. But I always say that, grades and tests don't get you bedside manner. So if you have a 4.0, but you don't know how to hold a hand, or you can't read the room and you don't have any, emotional intelligence and all that, it's not going to get you anywhere in nursing. So I've managed to come this far in my career without my master's, and I'm actually fine with it. It's a lot of school that I didn't want to have to put myself through,
Mhm.
honestly.
Yeah, and it really is about the impact, the
Yeah.
result, right? At the end of the day, more than anything else. And you can be an impact player with or without those advanced degrees.
Yeah.
And
Well, I
I
mean,
just
there are people with their master's degree that have not been successful at management with staff and in general, whether it's in nursing or any sort of field. You have to be a people person. So again, I've always been a huge advocate for, if it's for you and it's something that is one of your goals, and you are a great test taker and you want to have those credentials, that's great. I just thought it was an extra burden on my self-confidence that I didn't need. And I still don't need it.
and it's working out nicely.
Yes.
Before we dive too far, I'm gonna play one of my favorite games, which is
Okay.
gonna be a little game called Let's Get Closer. They ain't sponsoring us yet, but eventually.
Okay,
And
sounds
the
good.
way that it'll work is that we've got three sets of cards, which are close, closer, and closest. And
Okay.
depending how far along we go, the questions get more interesting and
Okay.
more intimate is probably the best word to use.
Okay.
So you'll pick a card, well, you'll pick a category, I'll pick the card, and then you'll answer, and then I'll answer, and then we'll go from there.
Okay.
Or are you wanting to start close, closer, or closest?
Just close is fine for
There we
now.
go. Alrighty.
I'm a risk taker, but you never know.
Yeah, exactly right. Let's start safe.
Yeah.
What are you most grateful for?
Hmm. Oh, I mean, I'm grateful for a lot of things, but I would say in the current moment, grateful for a phenomenal family and friend base. Just in general, I have a very close family, and my husband and children. We have a very healthy life, and so I mean, you couldn't ask for more. There's a lot of things going on in the world right now, and just being able to ground yourself at the end of the day with your family and be happy with that is enough. And just health in general. Little things might happen to you here and there, but there are a lot of terrible things that could happen. So you always have to make sure you're looking at that big picture.
Mhm. Well said. And mine also was going to be like health, just because
Yeah.
recently I know a couple of people who've just been going through some stuff, and it's tough, right? When you see that you've put in that work, you're like, okay, now it's my time to enjoy. I have one colleague in specific who she's worked her backside off for the last 40 years and is now at retirement age, but doesn't quite have the health to enjoy that,
Yeah.
which is tough to see, right? And so it's those little things, like you said, right? So the classic, you don't know what you have until it's gone type thing. So I'm like,
Mhm.
let me try to be grateful for that on the front
Absolutely.
end. Great. Love that. All right. So for round two, are we going close again or are we venturing further?
You can do the next one up.
Yeah, closer, let's do it. All right, close. Yeah, closer. Okay, let's go with this one. Okay, this is an interesting one. What do you miss about being a kid?
Well, in looking at my current children who are 5 and 10, some of the things they worry about on a daily basis, which again, developmentally, that is in their head a crisis, right? But as an adult, you think like, all right, not a big deal. But it is to them. I think just going back to times where you weren't having all these crucial conversations all the time in the workplace, or not even in the current, just in the past. I'm thinking of different roles I've been in, like work is stressful, right? Even if you're in a really healthy environment, working in healthcare is really, fast paced 24/7, no breaks, right? So I think I miss most riding my bike in my neighborhood and like just kind of going wherever and not really having a plan and being with my friends and just coming back when the street lights came on and or dinner was ready or whatever, and just really not having a care in the world because life is pretty stressful when you get older. No matter, how well everything's going for you, it's pretty fast paced and it's nonstop. So I
Mhm.
want to go back to just kind of riding my bike and going to the park.
Yeah, I feel that it's those moments where it's just like that limitless wonder of what
Yeah.
could be, right?
And I'm an 80s kid, right? So we were
Okay.
like sent out the front door and parents, there's no tracking of anywhere we were. So it was
Yeah, there's no find my phone
nowhere
or
near
something like
just out for the last 4 hours. And it's, oh, I was at the park, and never would that happen today, right? It's hard to even have my kids go to the bus stop 2 houses down without worrying. So times
that.
have changed.
It's terrifying times, yeah,
Yeah.
and I'd say for myself, summertime was, like, the best time as a kid when it's, like, that last day of school is, like, the stuff of legends. So
Yep.
for me, I would say it was really being able to just have that ability to be like, "Okay, I'm waking up in the morning and I don't have to go to school. Oh,
Yeah.
and my parents are going to work. Oh, this is wonderful." And just being able to go in and just have that unlimited sense of adventure where it's like, "Yeah, what are we gonna be doing today outside?" Right? So
Absolutely.
that was cool to
You
do.
just reminded me of the summer too. Getting out of school for the summer, we went to the beach all the time, and I just remember having no care in the world, laying on a towel with my Walkman, and just my parents knew I was there. I was sitting on the towel, but there could be hours that went by that I just listened to some '90s music, '80s music, whatever, on my Walkman, laying down on my towel. Again, no care in the world, just totally chill. So, yeah, gone are those days.
Yeah. It does leave, a lot to be missed, but I find that in positions like ours where we have that hybrid role, like, that's probably as close as we can get, or that work from home role is, like, that freedom and flexibility, that's what it looks like for us now, but it's like you still
Oh,
got.
yeah. No, it's definitely working from home is a huge game changer. I mean, just even being able to sit on my deck and listen to birds while I'm doing some work is so good for your mental health. I mean, especially coming from the hospital atmosphere of having windows that you can't open for good reason.
Mhm,
So no real airflow. And if you need to get out for a quick actual breath of fresh air, it's hard to actually get outside without having to announce to everyone, I'm leaving for 5 minutes. So it is, I'm very grateful for my current situation for sure.
mhm, like I said, it's those little things, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to hear a little bit about the journey that took you to where you're at now. Of course, being a VP of a company that is using AI solutions to improve patient safety, that is so right up my alley. So
I
I
know.
want to hear about the ways that number one, you got to where you're at, because I think that'll be a huge source of inspiration to people that can say, I've seen an example of somebody who didn't need to spend that 20, 30, 40, $50,000 on a master's degree to be able to have the sort of impact that you're having. So walk
Yeah.
us through that, Susie. How did you get to where you're at today?
Sure. Well, I've always been into healthcare. I even did what they called as candy striping back in the '90s, but now it's simple volunteering is the word. But I only have one family member in that is actually in the healthcare field, and that is my mother's sister. She's been a pediatric nurse practitioner her whole life. She recently retired, but again, nurses never retire, so I'm sure she's doing something on the side. But she kind of got me into, when I was little, she used to bring home like gauze and tape and all that stuff for me to play like nurse and doctor with my siblings and stuff like that. So I just always knew that I wanted to care for people. So when I chose a specialty, a major for college, I chose nursing. I knew it was going to be tough. Again, I was not always a great test taker. It's more around multiple choice testing, gave me severe anxiety. Given too many choices, I start to freeze up and I'm like, what? I know this answer, but now that there's 10 answers in front of my face, now I don't know. So I was nervous about that, but I did really well in college. I played field hockey as well. I did quit field hockey my senior year because it was too much with trying to do clinicals and a sport at the same time. There were nurse majors that did two sports and did nursing, and I was like, wow, that's amazing. I need to be able to focus, especially with some of my test taking difficulties. So Yeah, college was a great experience. And right while I was in college, I worked in the summers or on breaks at a hospital in Boston as a clinical associate, which is a really great place to start. For people in school, you want to make sure you try to get like a job in healthcare while you're in college, so that some doors may open a little easier for you when you graduate. It's a little harder when you graduate from college and just expect to go interview at a hospital and say, well, I've never worked in a hospital before. It would be great to show up and say, nope, this whole time I've been a clinical associate on this floor in med surge, and I'm doing patient care and vital signs and all this stuff. So it was great to have that role because I was hired as an RN on the unit that I was a CA. And that was an adult med surge unit. And I was there for a good amount of years, and we saw everything. Being med surge post op type unit, everything from precaution rooms of C. diff and all these infections to patients that are post op from a horrible cancer, and they've got a Foley and a feeding tube and all that stuff. And then you had your mental health patients. Unfortunately, in the 2000s, even mental health was not a huge subject that we covered in nursing school. And it is now. I know that the school that I graduated for, St. Anselm, they are covering mental health a lot now. In fact, I will be doing a little talk with them in a couple weeks to go over trauma informed care, and things like that. So going into the nursing field, not really having any background in mental health or how to care for patients with mental health was quite challenging for all of us. But then it's just about, like, is that your niche? Is that something that is even interesting to you? And I figured out that it was. So did I mind doing bed baths and wound changes and rehabilitation, all that? No, but like at the end of the day, my purpose, I felt like, and the reason that the things that I was the best at were connecting with the patient, and really hearing them mentally. Like, what is going on with them? What are they most upset about? What do they need out of this hospital stay? And sometimes to my own detriment. There were times I stayed late for my shifts, not expecting to be paid. I wasn't like that, but just like, oh, I'm still talking to the patient. They're upset. Like, they want to talk to me. It's fine. I'm going to be here for a few more minutes. So
Right.
I just really kind of held on to that. And I knew that pediatrics was always going to be my like end goal. I've always been like a youth sports coach my whole life. I love sports. I love working with kids and the developmental stages that they're going through and supporting them through that. So I always had on my vision board that I wanted to run a child psychiatry unit.
Mm.
But of course, I wasn't anywhere near there when I was still doing bedside nursing, not even a charge nurse yet when I first had that first role. So it took a good amount of years. I moved to the ICU at Children's Hospital Boston after working in med surge adult. And that I was there for about 7 years. And it was a long, amazing experience. But I think we've talked about the fact that it might have been too long in retrospect. So I'm pretty open about the trauma and PTSD that I've experienced in my own career. Some of that is due to me not saying no to things and kind of being a yes person. Yes, I'll take that patient. Yes, I'll take the most difficult patient. Yes, I'll take the most challenging, the sickest. All that. And, I think I pushed it a little too much. I was there for maybe a little bit too long. And then I said, you know what, Susie, you gotta move on to something that you're not going to take home this sadness every day.
Mhm.
Um, so that's when I started thinking about, where can I still work in pediatrics? Where can I still work in mental health, but maybe not such a really sad environment. I mean, the ICU there was, most of the patients either weren't going to make it, didn't make it, or were lifelong illnesses that, was really tough for them. And it took a toll on me. So, and
That's tough.
again, there's not a lot of support for staff when they experience traumatic events at work, which I can name two that happened in one shift, and that's just two, right? But I worked there for 7 years, right? So imagine that amount of time and not really having any there were no like focus groups. There were no, offerings to meet as a group after work and go over what we had just seen the previous shift, which is something that I put in place as a manager when I did run a unit, because that's something I would have loved to have when I was a staff member.
Yeah.
So went from that to working again with children for a little bit at Tufts Medical Center, but a little more stable. It was like post-op patients, kids with medical issues, but they usually went home and things like that. So that was a little bit lifted me up a little bit more, and I wasn't as sad going home and things like that. But that's where I started to realize that I was really seen as a leader. I did a lot of charge nurse team leader stuff there, and I had a boss that was really supportive and was like, you are, you're not intimidating. You're fun to work with. Like, have you ever thought of, going into management? And I said, no, not at all. You know, so, but again, like nursing, the sky's the limit. So all I did was do my research. Where do I want to start? Do I start with managing in a child environment, or do I start managing where like, it seems like I fit in the best, and maybe it's just not the exact specialty that I am really envisioning for my future. So I did end up getting a role as a nurse manager of a medical telemetry ICU, which was adults, 18 to 102. And again, just because it wasn't pediatrics doesn't mean I didn't give 110%. It's just that that's what was right in the moment. And I was there for a good 12 something years. And
Wow.
that's where I gained all my leadership skills. I mean, I had the privilege of having a consultant that came in to help with team building throughout the whole hospital. And that's when I happened to just start. So it was like perfect timing where like she was able to give me some great, tidbits on leadership. I did leadership classes, all those personality tests that you do as a
Oh,
team
yeah.
building stuff. So that was a great like advantage I had as a new manager, as well as advocating for yourself as well. I had to advocate a lot for my own training. So like you do not get a ton of training in management. You are kind of just thrown like, thanks for you've got the job. This is your unit. You're 24/7. Here's a pager. Get ready to be called all the time. And there was
Into the
yeah.
what?
And I mean, regardless of how supportive, your senior leadership is or whatnot, at the end of the day, there really is no like playbook for nurse management. It is like foot on the ground. You've got to connect with staff. You need to be on top of every patient on that unit. You need to know what is your schedule for the day, who's called out, who had like, there's so much that goes into it. So you do have to advocate for your own like side classes, like
Right.
CEUs and doing your own trainings. And even if that means buying your own books that they don't reimburse you for, things like that. I have a pile of leadership books here in my office that I would love to hand out that really help me get through some situations that I wouldn't like, crucial conversations,
Right.
things like that. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, and then while I was in that role, I also was chosen to train in Just Culture, which is one of my
Mm,
most prized certifications that I hold, because that is so important in the healthcare field, that staff feel that they can come to work and feel safe coming to work, that they're not going to get in trouble for being a few minutes late or making a med error or whatever. It's all about, did you know in the moment that what you were doing was wrong? Have we talked about it before? Have we already met 5 times about this? And so on. And I found that having a Just Culture environment really, I mean, it made or break a healthy unit.
mhm.
So I was happy to say that, when I did leave, my staff were sad for me to go, but also were happy for me to move on to my next, thing, because we had become family. Um,
Beautiful.
and you want to be able to say that about your boss, that, you consider them almost like a family member, not too close where you know everything about their lives, which I feel like I still
Yeah, I know, right?
but
It's tough.
staff
Like, the
well,
line
staff
is
will come in and they'll say, "I need this time off because this happened," and then they spew a bunch of information about their lives. It's like, "Oh, no, no, I don't need to know that." But I mean, like, enough that they feel like you really care about them as a person and not just a number on the unit.
yeah, that you've heard them, right? And that it's like, not only are you going to give me what it is that I need or make an avenue for that to be possible, but that you also care, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, not in the weird way, like you said, that where people
Well,
some
and I think, like, I learned the hard way in that first role that I almost cared too much, and my husband would say to me, like, why are you on the phone at 2 a.m. with Sally? I'm just making up the name about the fact that her car wouldn't start and her blah, blah. And I said, well, because I feel really bad. And he's like, I understand, but it's 2 in the morning. So I did learn a lot about boundaries, though. It's very important as a leader that you do set boundaries because most of your staff will respect those boundaries. But there are some that if you give a little and you show that you're available all the time, they will assume that that's okay, and to their I understand they think they can contact you 24/7, and technically they can, but it's supposed to be really for like emergency type things on the off hours and whatnot. So it was very hard for me to set boundaries in my next role, when I moved on to running the child psychiatry unit in Boston, but it really, I set those boundaries from the beginning, but I was still true to myself of being like a super caring, empathetic person. And I said, at the end of the day, if you really need me at this time, absolutely call me, but just use good judgment. Like I would
Right.
get a call or I would get a text at like 2 a.m. saying that so and so was switching with, Joe on Tuesday. Could that wait, and be put into an email? Yes, right. Those type of things. But if it's a true like worry, like, oh my God, this is happening on the unit, and I meant to call the supervisor, but I knew that you would have an answer. I still to this day would never not answer the phone, because I think that's why I was successful in my management career, because I did care about every single staff member. And
Right.
I sometimes I had 100. I mean, I think the highest number of people I managed was like 100, and
That's
I
a
knew
lot.
every single one of their names and their kids' names and what sports did their kids play and what play they were going to be in next week because I cared. It wasn't me trying to suck up or anything. I truly am a people person, and I just was I talk a lot. I love going out to talk to my staff and ask them how their lives are going because, when they're having a hard day on the unit and you come out and all you're talking about is if they've checked on their patient or have they done this with patient in this room, it's going to get old and they're gonna, genuinely, I just never wanted to be that manager that was micromanaging everyone all the time. I tend to think I have pretty good hiring skills. So I usually hire people based off of the potential that they have. Again, I don't look at their grades on the resume. I don't look where they, if they had a master's or whatever. I've had staff that have their master's degree that I've had to let go due to whether it was behavior or practice. I've had staff that barely made it through high school that were then my secretaries on the unit and are probably the best employee. I could name one. Dawn, if you're out there listening, she is my number one employee I've ever had. And her staff and her family would say the same thing. Like every nurse on that unit would say the same thing, that she was the heart of our unit and knew everything about the unit, had a pulse on it all the time, knew exactly who was coming in, had everything ready to go. And she didn't have a college degree. And I would hire her for anything. I would hire her to this day for anything. Um, and so that's just another plug for like, be yourself and try your hardest and show your heart. Anybody can be trained in anything. I've had people come in saying, I'm really worried because I've never done this job before, but like child psychiatry is my passion. And I have a sister who, unfortunately lost her life to blah, blah, blah. And they've been some of my best employees. Again, experience doesn't always say that you're going to be the best at something. Number of years in the role doesn't make you the best at something. It's really what you bring to the table every day, like as a human being, and like what is in your heart. And do you give 110% every single time you come to work?
Yeah,
Um,
I love that
so
because more than anything else, that's really what I've seen as kind of the differentiator between those who are going to be those crazy impact players that are going to not only impact their teams, but the lives of patients for years to come. And those who are like, yeah, they kind of get the sense that yeah, I've gone through and I've earned the right, right?
yeah,
And I feel that when we get to that, that's where we start seeing a slippery slope. And sometimes, that comes from having a degree. Sometimes it comes from having experience. But
yeah,
more than anything else, it's what, as cheesy and cliche as it sounds, it's what's inside your heart, right?
it
That really
really
does
is.
make
I
it
know
about
it's
it really
super
good.
cheesy. It's super cheesy, but I mean, I've literally managed at this point 3 different units, and at the end of the day, my best employees were not always the ones with the highest degrees or the years of experience. It really does not matter. Did I have amazing nurses that had their master's and doctorate that had worked as a nurse at the bedside for 45 years?
Sure.
100%.
Right.
And I could name them again, but I won't bore everybody. But like, I want to do shout outs because they're so
Yeah,
amazing.
I know, right?
Becky, if you're out there, you're the best. So I just really want to hone in on that. Like, and so when I went to work at the child psychiatry unit, I thought I was actually going to be there for many years because that was always my life dream to open a child psych unit. It was literally on my dream board.
Right.
But working on that unit is when I became introduced to the current product that I now at the
Mm,
company that I work for, which is Observe Smart. We utilized the product for 5 and 15 minute checks on patients that were high acuity. Our unit was 3 to 12-year-old children, and we had most of our patients. So there's 24 beds. We would have pretty much most of our patients on at least 15-minute checks, and probably more than half of them on fives, and some of them on one-to-ones for suicidal ideation and whatnot. But this product changed my life as a manager because I could go to bed at night knowing that no one could just be sitting in the nursing station checking off that they checked on a patient in the electronic health record or on a piece of paper. Yes, I checked on Johnny. Yes, I checked on Sally. You actually have to be within a certain amount of feet to check the patient off for the iPad to even, light up. And then you can press that you've checked on the patient, that they're breathing, that they're moving, they've acknowledged that you're checking on them, and then you move to the next patient. But if you try to do that from the nurse's station or even 10 feet away or outside the door, the system will literally not light up and it will not let you do the check.
yeah, that's
Um,
powerful. And I'll tell you why that really stands out to me. I also, as you know, work in addiction and mental health and even in my informatics role now, it's still a big piece of what I'm doing. The trickiest piece that I have seen time and again is the fact that it is quite difficult without a system like that to be able to actually see that that's happening, other than rolling back the cameras, which of course nobody wants to have to do that. But
yeah,
more than anything else, it's about patient safety, right? And I
yeah,
think that a lot of us, we kind of forget that. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about kind of how it is that you guys as an organization are making that impact on patient safety and how kind of AI is playing into that.
sure. So when I first started with the company, AI wasn't always like in the forefront because when the product was developed, it was developed by two nurses, which is super important to mention because they were the ones living that life every day of using the same methods over and over again for their entire career, which was like paper and pen, right? Going in a room and having a check sheet that you checked on your patients, or even just in the chart, wheeling your wow into the room and saying, yes, I checked on Sally Jones and this everything's fine. Where is the proof in that? And unfortunately, as much as you want to believe that staff are always doing the right thing and whatnot, I always say that 90% of staff, 95% of staff come to work wanting to do the right thing. But at the end of the day, with staffing constraints, the high ratios on the units, having too many patients, not enough time to even eat, right? Sometimes you naturally slip in your best practice and you say, you know what, I was in there like 15 minutes ago. I bet he's fine. I'm just going to check off these fine. I was just in there 15 minutes. What's a difference of 5 minutes? Well, guess what? There's a huge difference. So, there's a matter of 2 minutes, 1 minute, 30 seconds that could go by and a patient could decide to harm themselves. So I think what's great about this is, we were 100% compliant utilizing this product, and we started out at 35% when I first started. And I came in and I was like, why? What the heck? Like, we have this amazing tool and the staff are using it at 35%. Like, let me find out why. And it was more that they just didn't really like get a lot of training in it from like they needed more like buy-in. Like, this is going to save your patients. Like, we are here to protect these kids all day long. Their parents, their guardians drop them off, and they are trusting that they're being watched at the hospital. How dare we not be watching these kids 24/7, right? So with this tool, it doesn't add work to the staff. So that's something that we want to be like really like that's what I want to like drive home to, because a lot of these products you'll think, well yeah, but how many extra staff is it going to take? How much is it going to cost? All that stuff. But there's no extra staff needed. You're taking your current staff, usually one or two people, depending on your census, and you're designating them to do checks. Um, and that's just in the one-to-one checks world, observations world. What I'm currently working on right now with my nurse colleague and my other engineer peers is some of our AI enhancements. So we have a current product that, I could go on for days about it, but the overview is it's an AI based machine learning. So basically, it's a sensitive motion detector that does not, there's no cameras, there's no noise, there's no blinking lights. It is just embedded in the ceiling and it picks up all patient movement, all any movement. So if a staff member is in the room for too long and it's the middle of the night, it will pick up, there's been a patient to staff interaction that's been a little bit too long. You might want to go check on that. Or a patient that's not supposed to be out of their room, it will pick up that they're out of their room and you'll get an immediate alert. So alerts are going to your cell phones, your computer, desktops, whatever you see fit. It's all customizable. And I could go on with all of the enhancements, but basically what we're trying to do is take away work from the bedside nursing and CA, nursing assistants, and help to be able to identify in the moment that someone is being unsafe or is at harm. We can detect ligature type things. If someone is attempting a gator roll, we can detect that. If someone's been in the bathroom for too long and they suddenly have this difference in velocity, like they were here and then now they're here, that may detect that they've fallen.
It falls. Okay. Wow.
Yep. Yeah, so we pretty much pick up everything, but again, you may be thinking alarm fatigue, right? So, like, we wanted to make sure from a nursing perspective that we're not putting out this product that you're gonna be getting, like, a million alarms. Because, like, what if you're on a med surg unit and you already have telemetry alarms going, IV pumps going off, um, you name it, right? But all of that. We make sure that the orders that the doctor or the nurse put in, are appropriate for an alert. So if I'm like walkie-talkie and I'm allowed to walk in and out of my room and I'm not a fall risk, of course you're not going to get an alert when I'm walking in and out of my room or I'm going into the bathroom. But
Mhm.
if I am deemed, more fall risk really high, suicide risk really high, elopement risk really high, then you're going to get an alert. So we're even installing in emergency rooms. That's kind of like a huge focus for us because there's never been anything for staff and administration to be able to detect if a patient who's in the waiting room that hasn't even gotten a bed yet is actually going to elope and leave.
Okay, that's
So,
wild. That
yeah,
is wild. Okay.
yeah.
So basically what I'm hearing is that AI is coming and it's here.
Coming, but
And
it's not replacing any nursing. So I wanted to be clear on that. There's been a lot of stuff lately about like, is AI going to replace the nurse? I have nothing to do with that. I would never condone that. I would
there's
be
no
the
way.
first
I
person
would
with
know
a
about that.
poster being like, no, no, no. This is only to help aid the staff in being able to identify unsafe situations. It's
Yeah.
not taking away any staff. It's not taking the place of any staff. Um, is it going to help you decrease the need for one-to-ones? Yes, but the staff are going to love that, right? So when you walk into your shift and you have 5 nurses and 4 aides, and then suddenly you have 3 one-to-ones, and now you're down to 1 aide to do all the vital signs, that that goes away with our product because the one-to-one, we have physicians that have stated, I decreased my one-to-one orders because I
Okay. Yeah.
actually believed my patients were being seen. And in all honesty, I was only putting them on a one-to-one because I wasn't sure that they were being watched.
Yeah, which is terrible that that has to happen, but I've seen it. We've all seen it,
Yeah.
right?
So we have seen like a 50% reduction in one-to-ones in some of our installments within the first 3 months, just solely because patients were being put on them for like precautionary reasons that weren't really related to them actually even being a really high risk for
Yeah.
that stuff.
It's
So
like the abundance of caution to be like, well, I want to make sure that nothing happens when the patient's in my care, so let's just throw everything at him to make sure.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. So yeah, AI is coming, like you said, but I will always be an advocate for it only aiding in what we've been asking for our entire career. So what's great about having nurses on this team is that we're able to be the voice of the staff that we once were. I was a bedside nurse most of my career, and then I was a team leader and a manager, and I had to hear from the staff as a manager, what resources do we not have? We had 3 falls today. Well, how could they have been prevented? With Observe
Oh,
Smart. And
there
I'm
you
not
go.
just, like, plugging the product, but really, like, there was nothing out there. The amount of falls meetings that I attended as a falls representative and all that,
You're
where
getting
we would
that
sit in the meeting for an hour and leave the meeting with not one action item because
part.
there was no ideas. Like, what do we do other than a checklist?
Yeah, it's like an age-old problem. It's like the worst thing that happens to a nurse to be like, I have to report that my patient fell, but it happens all the time.
It
right?
happens all
Right.
the time.
And that's
So
where I think a lot of what you were talking about with just culture, which I wish we could have got into today, but you're obviously coming back, and we're
all
gonna
right,
have to chat
great. Yeah, I
about
could
that.
do a whole
Because
hour on just culture.
of course, because for me personally, that's the whole system, right? Is if people aren't talking about these things, what happened? Like, what was I doing? Like,
Yep,
what did I do earlier in the day? How did I structure my care, my rounds, right?
yep.
If we're scared to talk about these things, then obviously we're going to have lots of meetings where it's like, well, there's no action items coming out of
You're
that.
also gonna have unreported things, right?
Right.
So even with our product, we found that, there's more reporting of events because staff are actually in the rooms now. So
Yeah.
when staff are in the and I don't mean to like say staff aren't going in the rooms because I was one of them myself. What I mean is, as I stated earlier, in reality, there are times when staff do check off that they checked on someone when they just didn't have the time. No malice usually, but it just is the reality, right?
Yeah.
So with this, we found that now that the staff are truly actually checking on the patients and physically present next to them and doing their checks, they're witnessing things in the room that are unsafe and then putting in an incident report for that.
Of course. And there's nothing wrong with that. People oftentimes will think that, oh, I've done something wrong or something is wrong if we're seeing more incident reports. Well,
No, it's actually
then
a good thing. Like, I had
now
a
we can
staff
do
member
something about it.
yeah, I had a staff member do their 15-minute check and found, like, a piece of a clipboard that
Ooh,
a staff member had left when they went to talk with the patient. And for a psych unit, there should be no metal, right? So that wouldn't have been found if we hadn't been doing our in-person checks that were mandatory, right? And again, no one got in trouble. It was just a learning opportunity. Like, hey, when you go in the room, make sure that you're not leaving any objects behind. I mean, even pencils.
yes.
So the amount of things that we were able to catch, I mean, did it add a little work for me as the manager when I would come in and have more incident reports in the morning? Yes. But was I able to tackle those things and do like a quick coaching with the staff and then have it never happen again? And then my life got easier. Does
Yeah.
that make sense?
Of
So
course. Yeah.
it's a little extra work in the beginning for the manager to, follow up on the incident reports, but in the end, you have a safer unit all around.
Exactly, which is what we're all here for, right? And I think that you've summed it up really nicely. Where can we learn more about you and also what it is that you're doing at your company? And of course, we put
Sure.
our links in the description, but tell us where we can find you, Susie.
Sure. So I'm on LinkedIn. Susie Branagan is my, Susan Branagan is my formal name, but no one really calls me that because I prefer Susie. So on LinkedIn, I am Susie Branagan, BSNRN. And you'll if you find me, I have the Observe Smart thing right in the background, and I kind of cover all the background that I have. I do some consulting as well on trauma informed care and just culture. So if
Mhm.
you're ever interested in having any talk or consulting on that as well. I am a just culture expert as well as trauma informed care and just healthy workplaces in general. You can
Mhm.
tie all those things together. And my niche is in mental health for not only patients, but staff. So my whole career has been around coming to work, making sure that the patients are safe, but then also taking care of the staff who over time can become traumatized from their own workplace from natural things about around being around patients who
Yeah.
themselves are traumatized, right?
Yeah, it's that vicarious trauma that oftentimes is because that wasn't even a term that was used in the literature until relatively recently, but it's been a huge thing, right?
No, it's huge.
And
It's what I talk about in some of my talks is the secondary trauma that you experience. I myself have trauma from 22 years of nursing, but I've
yeah,
talked with a therapist about it, and it's like I said, mental health. You got to tackle it head on, and not be ashamed of it, and not be ashamed to say, "Hey, I have some PTSD from my life in nursing," and that's okay. Um, as long as you're getting the help that you need. So yeah, I'm willing to talk about it all. And, my LinkedIn profile focuses mostly on Observe Smart, which is my current role. And you can reach out to me anytime about our product and some of our newest enhancements. And yeah, I mean, I'm on Instagram as well and Facebook and all that under the same name. But yeah, LinkedIn is more, the professional realm if you're looking to hear more.
that sounds good. Yeah, we'll plug all that in the description. Really appreciate you coming through to the Enlightened RN. And we will definitely have to have you back just for that trauma informed piece as well as the just culture, because two areas of significant passion for me. But It's
Yeah.
one of the things that can be tricky, especially depending on like how you approach it, whether or not it's something that's fully supported all the way at the top. Would
Yeah,
love to hear how you've been able to implement that, but we ran out of time, but I was not
absolutely.
too much that we had to chat about, and
I
I
know,
appreciate
I
that.
know. This has been such a pleasure. And yeah, reach out to me anytime. I'm happy to spread the word on nursing mental health. And I love the title of your podcast, by the way.
Thank you.
It's really fits everything. So
Oh yeah, yeah. We sing it from the same song sheet. So looking forward to having you back, Susie.